Sean here. As a precision nutrition certified coach, I'd like to spend a little bit of time to cover some information on how to get the proper nutrition to help you reach your fitness goals. I'm going to start off with a disclaimer here. The information covered in this presentation is not intended to be used as a replacement for advice from your doctor, dietitian, or nutritionist. And this is particularly true if you have a medical condition that affects metabolism. These will include diabetes, PCOS, various thyroid issues. This is not intended to override that advice from your doctor. Now, some of this can certainly be useful if you do have some of those conditions. But just remember, you may have to adapt it for your specific medical needs. All right. Another thing about this presentation is that this isn't really intended to cover specifically race day or race week nutrition, as there are some changes that you should make leading up to race day. This is really intended to be just day-to-day nutrition needs to help you meet your goals. All right, so without further ado, let's get into the nerdy part of this presentation, starting with macros. All right, so the question then becomes, well, what are macros? Well, macros is simply an abbreviation for macronutrients. Macro intending to mean large. All right, it's what you eat in a relatively large amount. Just contrasting to your micronutrients, which are your vitamins, your minerals. Macronutrients are going to be you're going to be consuming on the order of grams, tens or hundreds of grams a day, versus milligrams or even micrograms for your vitamins and minerals. So there's a significantly large difference in scale. The focus of this presentation is going to be on the macronutrients. We can touch on micronutrients certainly in a later presentation. We'll also talk a bit about supplements. Now this presentation is really kind of focused on what you consume on a regular basis in relatively large amounts compared to some of the others. So it's not going to cover supplements, it's not going to cover vitamins and minerals specifically. All right, we're going to focus on macros in this presentation. All right, so when we say macros, what are the macros? All right, there's really 4 macronutrients, 3 of which we consume on a regular basis in relatively large amounts. The first of which is protein. It comes from the Greek word proteus, meaning of prime importance. All right, that's going to be macronutrient you want to focus on. All right. As you can probably guess, as you probably heard, protein is used for building and maintaining muscle mass. Well, really, it's all tissues in the body, but as athletes, we focus on muscle mass. Another great thing about protein is that of all the macronutrients, protein is the most satiating. So if you get enough protein in your diet, it can help you feel full and help you prevent overeating. All right, and then the next is another macronutrient you have is your fats. Fats are energy-containing macronutrient, about 9 kilocalories per gram, and it also is used to facilitate absorption of fat-soluble vitamins such as vitamin E and vitamin K, as well as helping with hormone production regulation. Of prime importance for a lot of athletes is testosterone. Very low fat diets can tend to disrupt testosterone production. The third major macronutrient that we're going to cover in this presentation is carbohydrates. Carbs. Well, everybody likes carbs, right? Most people do. Especially endurance athletes like myself. So energy-containing substance as well, and includes the subset of carbs, your fiber, which helps with digestion, feeding your gut bacteria for digestion and hormone regulation. So proper carbs are certainly important as well. Now, since macronutrients contain calories, energy, we tie macros directly to calorie consumption. So the question then becomes, well, how many calories should we be consuming? Really relates to a couple of different things. All right, first is, okay, what is your goal? Are you trying to lose some weight, or more appropriately, lose fat? Or which may you refer to as cutting? Are you trying to maintain your body weight and just build muscle, lose fat, recomposition? Or are you trying to gain weight, bulking? Other things that affect how many calories you should be consuming in a day include your training, obviously. Okay, as an obstacle course racer, you should be including both cardiovascular as well as strength training into your routine. So certainly you need the energy to be able to do that. You also have your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, NEAT. It's a big fancy word for saying, well, how much activity do you do that's not intentional exercising? If you're just walking around in your normal day-to-day routine, taking care of the kids, even just, if you're fidgeting at your desk, and all of that is part of your NEAT. So that's certainly a portion of what you'll have to evaluate when you're determining how many calories you should be consuming. All right, so to determine the number of calories you should be consuming in a day, one way to do this is take your body weight and multiply by a factor based on your activity level and your goal. All right, so we're going to put a table up here, just shown. We'll also put a spreadsheet in the video description below to help you calculate your calories and macros. All right, so I can afford to lose a few pounds, so I'm going to use myself as example for the calculations as we go through here. Moderately active, I train 5 days a week. I do have a bit of a desk job, so that does reduce my activity level. So I'm going to put myself down using this table under weight loss and moderately active. So based on this table, my multiplier would be 12 to 14. At 170 pounds right now, multiplier of 12 to 14 puts me in a range of 2,040 to 2,380 calories per day. All right, sounds like a reasonable number. I'm going to split the difference, and we're going to call it 2,200, just to make the math easy. Okay, so the first macronutrient we're going to calculate is protein. For simplicity's sake, we're going to keep it real simple and have it at 1 gram per pound of body weight. A lot of sites you may see it'll say 1 gram per pound of lean body mass. For a lot of athletes, especially those contemplating running an ultra, you're already reasonably lean, and using your current body weight is close enough. And there's really no drawback to slightly more protein. Something to be aware of, though, if you got quite a bit of weight to lose, this becomes less accurate, and using 1 gram per pound will give you an excessive amount of protein. So you can use 1 gram per pound of your target body weight. So if you want to lose 40 pounds, let's say subtract 40 pounds from your current body weight and use that as your grams of protein per day. All right, so again, using my body weight as an example, about 170 pounds. So that would be 170 grams of protein per day. Multiply that, 4 calories per gram comes out to 680 calories. We're going to subtract that from my goal calories for the day, 2,200, and we'll end up with 1,520 calories to break up between fat and carbohydrates. Okay, so the next macronutrient to calculate is going to be fats. All right, fats are going to be a critical nutrient to help with hormone production and regulation, as well as absorption of fat-soluble nutrients such as vitamins A, D, E, and K. We want to make sure that we have sufficient fat in our diet. Generally, the recommendation is about minimum of 15% of your calories, 15% of your calories coming from fat. So in my example, 2,200 calories per day times 15%, I should have at least 330 calories coming from fat. Fats, 9 kilocalories per gram, so divide that by 9, comes out to about 37 grams of fat as a minimum. Personally, I like to have a more balanced diet between fat and carbs. A lot of people like that. Some people tend to want higher fats. Some people like lesser fats. That's a matter of preference. Typically on the order of about 25 to 35% of your calories for a balanced macronutrient profile works for a majority of people. So if I went with 25% of my calories, that would be 550 calories, which would leave me 970 calories left. Or I can go with 35%, 770 calories from fat, leave me with 750 calories remaining. Or I can split the difference. Nice thing is with flexible dieting and using macros is we can day to day, you can balance between fat and carbs. You can think of it as a lever. If you go higher in fat, you want to go lower in carbs, and vice versa to try to maintain your energy. All right, now that we've calculated the protein and fat macros using the balance of our calories, we can distribute that for carbohydrates. How many carbs you should eat in a day depends a bit on how much fat you're eating in a day. So going back to my fat example, if I use 25% of my calories from fat, I'm left with 970 calories to my goal of 2,200 calories. Divide that number by 4, we get 242 grams of carbs. If I went 35% fat, higher fat means lower carbs. I'd be left with 750 calories. Divide that by 4, we end up with 188 grams of carbs. So quite a bit of a range in there, and if I split the difference, if I went 30% fat, then I'd be somewhere in the middle, somewhere around the order of about 200 to 220 grams of carbs. As mentioned earlier in this presentation, fiber is a subset of carbohydrates. We want to include we include fiber in the total carbohydrates. I know there's some calculations that use net carbs versus total carbs. For simplicity, just keep fiber as part of total carbs in these calculations. Minimum recommendation for fiber from a day protein would be at least 14 grams of fiber per 1,000 calories. So using my 2,200 calories per day, divide that by 1,000 and then multiply by 14, works out to approximately 31 grams of fiber as a minimum. Just be aware though, that's a minimum. Now you certainly go higher with the fiber. Just be aware that too much fiber can cause digestive distress. This is especially true if you're coming from a less than optimal diet where you're not eating a lot of fiber and then you suddenly jump up. That can really mess with your gut. So bring it up gradually if you're coming from a very low fiber diet up to a more optimal diet. If you are going higher than the minimum, that's certainly fine. Just you have to play around with it a little bit. You have to be aware that even for people who have been eating reasonably high fiber, too much fiber can still cause digestive stress. For most people, upwards of 70 grams of fiber can cause a lot of problems. So just be aware of that and choose your fiber carefully. Two more quick notes I want to cover relating to macronutrients. Sugar. Sugar is also a subset of carbohydrates. Unless you have a pre-existing condition that affects metabolism, such as diabetes or thyroid conditions, most people shouldn't need to religiously track how much sugar they consume. Just make sure, obviously, it's tracked as part of your daily calories. Most people do better if they are consuming sugar to consume it in the area around your workouts and race. So either an hour or so before a race, during a workout or race, and then shortly after. All of these would be the better times to consume your sugars. Your body is more insulin sensitive, and it uses that sugar to shuttle nutrients into the muscles and into the cells for production, and it's less likely to be stored as body fat. All right, and then finally, the fourth macronutrient. Technically, it's a macronutrient because it has energy, is alcohol. All right, alcohol is 7 calories per gram. Now, if you do choose to imbibe, certainly no problems with that within reason, but make sure you are tracking that if you're going to be dedicated to your total calories. And if you are tracking your alcohol as part of your macros, you'll have to do a little math and subtract from either your carbohydrates or your fats. Generally, it's recommended to subtract from your carbs because there is that minimum value of fats required.